You know how people so often ask you your 5 top desert island ingredients? Well, right up there for me with garlic and olive oil and tomatoes. They're hugely versatile, they're incredibly healthy, and they look pretty much as good as they taste. First up on today's tomato menu is a smoky seafood pot with lovely Mediterranean overtones. To make it, you're going to need a can of tomatoes and some ripe fresh ones, smoked paprika, onion, garlic and chili, white wine, some red wine vinegar, a pinch of sugar and some fresh coriander, and then of course cubed fish and some peeled prawns. Doesn't really matter where you go in the Mediterranean. There's always some kind of dish that involves tomatoes and seafood. And quite right too, because really add a bit of garlic and a little bit of olive oil, tomatoes and seafood, and you've got the perfect meal, whichever way you look at it. I've just tossed some boiling water over these tomatoes. Basically, I've cut off the top and I've just slit the bottom over here, so they can be really easy to peel. Now, it's not the end of the world if you don't peel the tomatoes, but it certainly is nice not to have sort of pieces of skin between your teeth, especially when the dish is quite simple. So if you were going to have a really slow stew, I wouldn't bother. I'm going to put the pot on over here, a generous glug of olive oil. Now, the minute you cook a tomato, you increase the lycopene. The lycopene is a really great antioxidant and apparently quite good for men. I'm just going to pop this into the pan. Then, it being slightly Mediterranean, we're going to need loads of garlic. So once you sort of chopped it as best you can, I want to use a bigger knife. Let's give this a stir. Turn it down slightly. You don't want to brown them. You just want to sort of give them a little bit of colour and get the flavour going. Right, so give the garlic a good chop. Again, because we do want that lovely garlicky flavour. Toss in the garlic. Always add the garlic slightly later because it's smaller and it tends to burn a little bit quicker. I'm going to toss in a whole chilli. The reason for a whole chilli is I don't want this to be a fiercely spicy dish. So while this is doing its thing, gently, I'm going to peel the tomatoes. Okay, so it's really quite simple. You just sort of pull the skin off because it's all sort of released and got loose and things. The antioxidants in tomatoes and the vitamin C and all the wonderful fibre really make them probably one of the healthiest vegetables around. But it wasn't always that way. Let's just give this a stir. Because they belong to the nightshade family and so were once considered deadly, deadly poisonous, which is terribly exciting. I'm just going to put some smoked paprika into the pan. Don't over paprika it because it is quite overpowering, rather have less than kind of more. Instantly gives that beautiful colour and a lovely, lovely aroma. Anyway, back to the deadly nightshade. So, other nightshade vegetables are like aubergines and peppers, all the kind of Mediterranean vegetables. And so they was considered wildly dangerous, and so people didn't eat tomatoes for years and years and years. It was only when the Spanish came along and said, no, don't be ridiculous, we're absolutely fine, that people started to eat them. They don't have to be too fine. You've taken the skin off, so they'll sort of eventually start to really melt into the pan. Got this very heavy board. Remember to use all the juices. Sizzle, sizzle. And I'm going to use 2 kinds of tomatoes, canned and fresh. Now, this is not strictly necessary, but I do find that the canned ones give a depth of flavour that fresh tomatoes don't. Where there are tomatoes, there has to be a bit of sugar. Again, this is just about balancing flavours, and it really is quite important. So the acidity of the tomatoes needs a bit of sweetness. I'm going to add red wine vinegar and some white wine. You find a lot of Portuguese dishes, actually, when they use tomatoes, add red wine vinegar. It just seemed like a good idea to me at the time. And then a sort of decent amount of white wine, sort of a quarter cup or so. And then a sort of decent amount of salt, nothing to clog an artery, but, you know, enough to make things taste good. Lots and lots of pepper, obviously. Lots of flavour we need. Toss that, let's just stir that. Pop the lid on so it can sort of all melt together. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to serve it as you would, I suppose, in the Med with some crusty bread. I'm going to make some ciabatta toasts. I think the fab thing about this recipe doesn't really matter when you serve it, middle of winter or middle of summer. It's always got that sort of fresh, slightly impressive feel about it. So it's a good all year rounder. Now, it's very important if you're going to make ciabatta toasts that you do heat your pan up to quite a huge sort of degree. Otherwise you won't get those lovely striations, those great lines that we need. The lovely thing about making ciabatta toasts is actually you can use stale old bread if you like, and no one will know the difference. It's quite a hearty thing. This is not sort of a genteel dish, it's more sort of peasant style. So I'm just going to do a couple of slices over there. Now, truth be known, you can actually just brush this with oil and be done with it, but I thought perhaps the odd herb might be nice, so I'm just going to get those. And in fact, while I'm at it, I'm going to get the seafood, because it's quite difficult to have a seafood hot pot without seafood in it. In this case, I've got some white fish and some prawns. Again, it's one of those things that actually you could really use whatever you liked. So I'm just going to finely chop some Italian parsley, and then I'm just going to put it in a little bit of olive oil, just for brushing purposes. So a little bit of parsley, some oil, some salt, and some pepper. All right, so just like a seasoned herb oil, really. Just give it a little stir. And then really all you want to do is kind of brush it over the bread. So you get like a bit of a greeny vibe going on. Brush both sides. And as you can see, the pan is literally smoking now. I mean, if you want to do this outdoors and cook the whole thing on a fire, this is a wonderful thing to do just literally on the braai. So pop those in there. I'm just going to check on the food. Oh, how divine. I'm going to add the fish before I add the prawns because it takes slightly longer. Turn it down a bit. All right, and then just pop your fish into the sauce. I'm using hake, very affordable, but most importantly, sustainable fish. So just an ordinary, cheap and cheerful white fish. It really, really doesn't have to be fancy. Now turn that down slightly because you don't want it to all fall apart. Pop the lid back on and leave that for another few minutes. Now it's getting awfully messy around here, so I'm just going to tidy that up. Okay, how are we doing? Lovely. You're not trying to toast it so it's crispy. What you want is some beautiful lines and just that like charred flavour, which I think is so nice. I'm trying to desperately learn how to clean up as I go. It's not my forte in life, but I am trying. Check on our fish. Now, depending on how thickly you cut the fish, it should take anywhere between sort of 5 to 8 minutes. Just be careful you don't stir it vigorously. Just let it sort of gently cook away. I'm gonna get the bruschetta off of here. Go. Lovely. And then toss the prawns in. Extravagantly marvellous prawns. So just give that sort of 2 minutes with the lid on, just to get all the flavours going. In the meantime, I've got some fresh coriander. If you wanted to, parsley would be absolutely fine, considering you used it on the bread. Some olive oil. And voila, I imagine. Yeah, that's just perfect. Just break up the coriander, scatter it on top, and then a little drizzle of olive oil because we can pretend we're Mediterranean. And that's it really. All you've got to do now is, I don't know, spoon a bit of the delicious sauce onto a piece of bread and tuck it.
The smokiness of paprika and the sweet tomatoes work so well with the fish and the beautiful prawns. It's just superb.